Hello and welcome to E-Commerce Gold. On today's show, we have Will, the founder of IQBAR, the company that promises to deliver food to your brain in a healthy and sustainable way. This show is brought to you, as always, by Rewind Protection Suite. Get it installed on your Shopify store for peace of mind. Protection against things like deleting products accidentally, apps causing conflicts. It even gives you a staging environment to test all your changes before you push them to your live store. This show is also brought to you by SendLane, the company that is coming after Klaviyo's customers, and for good reason. They have an incredible product. It includes email, SMS, and reviews for free. They have an event coming up. Check out the link in the show notes. It's in San Diego in September. You should go if you're anywhere near. On to today's episode. Will, thank you so much for joining us today on the Ecom Gold podcast. How are you doing today, sir?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing well.
Good. Yeah, I listened to a show you were recently on and was inspired by the answers and the questions. So I had to have you on Ecom Gold and give everyone a quick overview, who you are, give the spiel, the products that you have, and kind of a bit of the backstory, please.
Sure. Yeah, so I am an entrepreneur. I started a company called IQBAR. We sell brain and body nutrition products, bars, plant protein bars are our kind of hero product line, but we also sell hydration mixes called IQ Mix and enhanced instant coffee called IQ Joe. So we're kind of building a platform of brain and body nutrition products. Live in Boston, married, 32 years old. Yeah, those are the high level stats.
What inspires a man like yourself to make these products? Where did the motivation come from?
Oh man, it was a variety of things. So I was fascinated with the brain. I took psych and neuroscience classes in college and just got really fascinated with psychology and physiology of the brain. And I wanted to work in that in some capacity, but I couldn't really figure out a way to do that post-college. And so by default, I just took a job in software. Pretty quickly learned I didn't want to do that for the next 30, 40 years. Got really good at a bunch of things, Excel, PowerPoint, how to run a meeting, how to pitch a room, things like that. But I was not, I dreaded Monday mornings, like I think a lot of people do. So at that time, I also got really interested in nutrition for personal reasons. I just became fascinated, and the intersection of nutrition and cognition really was what interested me, because I kind of felt like crap every day and had brain fog and would crash at 2 p.m. And so I just got really interested in diet and read a couple books that totally changed my perception of diet. And then I also read a couple books on consumer goods and folks who had started consumer goods companies. And so I became really interested in this concept of consumer goods entrepreneurship, especially because I wasn't an engineer or anything like that. So I was also always interested in business and startups and maybe doing my own thing one day, but I always wanted to make it myself, like conceive of the product, make it with my bare hands, create it, bring it into existence, understand it tip to tail, versus say a tech product where I would hire some outsourced folks to build the product. Like I always wanted to build my own product. So that kind of constricted me to consumer goods. So yeah, it was just like a combination of all of those things. And then I had this concept of brain food. Like, why doesn't that exist? Which that's why I mentioned the original interest in the brain. Why doesn't brain food exist? There's all these packaged goods that are geared towards your body. So, gut health, losing weight, building muscle, and there's nothing geared towards the brain. So I thought that was weird. And then also last thing I'll say is like, I was, 25 and it's like no kids, no debt. I had the ability to bring my personal burn rate down to almost nothing. And I was like, all right, this is like this one window of my life where I could really go all in on something, before I get married, have kids and whatnot. So it was all those things conspired together to bring me to the realization that I should start a brain food company.
Talk to me about brain food then. So what are we talking about? Just getting your brain onto a level playing field, as in most of our modern population is behind where a natural brain of a human running through a forest hundreds, if not thousands of years ago should have been operating at, and you're fighting to get us back to level? Or are you talking about advancements, unlocking parts of the brain?
Mostly the former, mostly back to level. I mean, one thing a lot of people don't, everyone kind of nerds out on micronutrition, and really what they should be doing is making sure they're getting macronutrition right first. So just eating less carbs is, going to help at first and foremost. Eating less sugar is going to help. High healthy fats, high protein diet, you're just going to operate better on. I mean, just try it and you'll see. So I had always had a high carb diet, and I would eat a lot of bread and pasta and things like that, and felt terrible because, absent like intense workouts where, that can be helpful. You're sitting at your desk. It's like, you're just going to feel like crap. You're going to gain weight and blah, blah, blah. So just nailing down your macros of, carbs, fat, protein is so important for just making your brain operate well. And then you can get into it. So we nail that. We try to nail that with our products, to nail that macronutritional profile, which is keto compliant and low carb and low sugar. And you don't even need to be like a keto dieter to consume it. It's just low sugar, low carb. So that's A. And then B, we build all our products based on inputs that are rich in things shown to be good for the brain. But we're not necessarily, it's not a nutraceutical or medicine or anything like that. We're not putting in like krill oil, omega-3 powder or anything like that. It's like, almonds are super rich in magnesium and vitamin E, for instance. So almonds are the base of the product. And cocoa powder is really high in flavonoids, and blueberries are really high in flavonoids, and matcha is really high in flavonoids. And so basically everything we've included because it's rich in some brain nutrient. Are you going to feel like you drank a Red Bull after consuming it? No, it's not. It's much more akin to a multivitamin than like a stimulatory, like, whoa, and kind of a feeling. So it's kind of like athletic greens, right? You're not going to like consume that and then feel incredible. It's just maintaining daily optimal brain nutrition.
Well, one thing I've always wondered as well is you have all these extracts, and you just named a few of those, and you have these compounds, and I don't know, call them elements, magnesium. Either way, you have these base ingredients that you try and get in for one reason or another. But we always seem to default still, especially in supplements and in food, to organic things that can be found in nature that can be included in products. Whereas in a lot of other industries, like detergent, for example, we've moved way beyond organic. We're no longer using like different leaves to try and clean our clothes or extracts from them. We're using chemicals. Why is it, and I'm just asking you because you're in the industry, why is it that we don't just use like chemical compounds to try and recreate some of the effects that a natural compound can create? Is it just a no-no when it's something that you consume? Do you have any insight or look to that? You do use that? Oh, okay. And is that the reason?
No, I mean, like not we, like IQBAR, but just like the industry does. I mean, you can take corn, for example. You can turn corn into so many different derivative chemicals. I mean, everything's a chemical, right? Chemical is a bad word, but eating a salad, you're eating a bunch of chemicals. So you turn corn into so much stuff. And of course, no, cavemen were not doing that, and I think so that happens. Like every supplement brand is, the things in that capsule were created by fermenting certain things in certain ways and manipulating things in certain ways and extracting, chemicals from whatever. Like I said, maybe it's corn, maybe it's whatever. So yeah, I mean, that's very much happening. And even like people say like, this word processed has a bad name. And for the most part, you do want to eat whole foods, nutrient dense foods, but there's some level of processing involved in like everything. So it's just on a spectrum. Like a random example, lecithin. Just sunflower seeds, you can extract a component of them called lecithin, sunflower lecithin. And lecithin, helps your body generate more choline, which is really good for your brain. So that's a really it's a processed end result of lecithin. Like
I guess
cavemen were not extracting that from sunflower seeds, but it's good.
to
Right?
question you
People
on
take
that,
it, supplement
why
with it.
wouldn't you just have choline? Is that what you said? Choline. Why
'Cause it doesn't
add the extra?
exist.
Right. So your body can make it, but we can't make it outside the body. It's sort of.
Yeah. And like, I'll give you another example. Resveratrol. So like red wine, sometimes people say, oh, it's good for your brain, it's good for your heart. It's why they're saying that is because of this compound called resveratrol. And the reality is you have to drink like gallons of it for you to get enough. But they can actually extract from grapes resveratrol. So you can just consume resveratrol powder. And many people do. It's super good for you. So yeah, in some instances, yes, get down to the very chemical itself and consume it, as a supplement. Of course, it has to be bioavailable. It has to actually be leveraged by your body. So that's important. But yeah, I don't really subscribe to like, this mentality that like everything has to be whole, or it's like depends. It all depends on context, and you would never consume any supplements if that was the case.
There's a lot of supplement companies out there now. It's huge industry. I don't know the numbers on it, but obviously massive. And it seems like one of the biggest USPs and or marketing frontiers for all of these companies is their blend or their formula, what they've put into it, how they've researched it. And surely we're all optimizing. You're optimizing for a big market or a large market. So I guess you don't have any specific niche products that are targeting very specific things that people might want to do. You're targeting a slightly broader range. But surely there's a point where everyone's formulas start to look somewhat the same. Do you experience that, or am I way off and actually there's millions of combinations?
No, I mean, you're not off. That's true with anything. Like cars eventually converge on like similar functionalities, maybe that's a bad example, but like certainly in consumer goods, yes, like it's not all that hard to reverse engineer a formulation. Like it's literally on the box or the pill caps, you know what I mean? So it's like, and most things going into it are commodities, and you can go get those commodities and you can spend a year just tinkering, boom, you've recreated what's already out on the market. So that's never really been the challenge. The challenge comes in the form of brand. Like when big conglomerates buy brands, they're buying the brand, not the formula usually. And so, that's just the perception that, oh, I, as a consumer, trust the supplement brand because it seems like they have a really good supply chain and they're only using trademarked compounds. And that's like brand value. It's not necessarily the formula value. So yeah, everything does kind of converge. And then once you get scale, you can have competitive advantages in things like supply chain. Your cost of goods could be lower because you're really smart about certain vendors you work with and the deals you cut with those vendors and how you ship all of those inputs to your manufacturer and how you manufacture and all the things around the formula. You can become more excellent than your competitors at, thus lowering your costs, thus boosting your profit margin, thus allowing you to undercut on price or spend more on ad dollars or whatever. But the formula itself, yeah, things tend to converge and commoditize.
One thing I've always been interested in, especially in supplements and especially with bars, is um, how do you fight yourself in a way as the person at the brand? Because people want things that taste good, but things that taste good inherently are difficult to create in a healthy way.
Yep.
Texture, taste profile, all of those things. And so is that an inner battle for you? Because I imagine there's cheat codes where you can dump in ingredients and be like, this is going to taste great, have an amazing texture. Maybe we just push that down the label a bit, versus making a product that is truly the best product for health or for that given need. Like, how do you balance that?
It's insanely hard. It's insanely hard. People expect so much from bars too. For whatever reason, certain categories, it's like, oh, you're going to give me protein and be low carb, low sugar, and give me XYZ micronutrients. And it's incredibly tough. You're never gonna compete with a Reese's peanut butter cup because you can't. Food technology is not such that you can recreate the sugar molecule, sucrose, table sugar. There is no one-to-one, comparison in a healthy way. There's some things that are kind of approximated, like allulose is one. I don't know if you're familiar with that compound, but it's super sugar-like, and your body doesn't break it down into blood glucose. So, it's come a long way, food science, in terms of being able to replicate. It's really the sweetness that's like the hard thing, because humans love sugar, you crave sugar, especially Americans, and it's just very, very, very hard to recreate sugar. But, you can do it through a combination of sweet fibers and certain kinds of stevia plant extract, and you can get there. But again, you're never going to compete. So that consumer has to be willing to make some level of sacrifice. And the goal is just minimize that level of sacrifice. Get it as close as you can. And then once they start consuming healthier stuff, their palate adjusts. They start craving and accepting those things, right? The first time you drink coffee, you think it tastes gross. The first time you drink wine, you think it tastes gross. The first beer you had, you think it tastes gross. Your palate adjusted over time. Now you like the taste of those things, so same thing is true with healthy foods. Like, you can adjust. Like, for me, if I drink like a Coke, it's like disgusting to me because it's so sweet. And I'm just like, oh, this is gross. At an earlier point in time when I was a kid, I'd be like, oh, this is delicious. So it's just, there's that too, right? People's palates adjust. But no, it is unbelievably challenging to make a mass market product with basically no sugar and have it taste good.
It's unlikely during this conversation that something on your store will break. Someone will delete something, but it can happen. So please install Rewind, and you can listen to the rest of this episode without having to worry. I don't know if you know, do you know why do our palates adjust? Like, why does that first beer taste horrible, but then great, a few years later? Do we know why?
I don't know why. I mean, the body is, of course, incredibly good at adapting. And you can only, your senses to things start to dull. Like, let's say I'm drinking coffee, right? And it's really bitter. The fifth sip is less bitter than the second sip because your body is like acclimated to that. And now it's less shocking. Similar idea if let's say you're wearing sunglasses and there's like a defect in your glasses, right? And it's like a blotch in your vision. Eventually the blotch goes away. Your body adapts and recreates your vision, excluding that blotch. So, I mean, the body is just incredibly adaptable. So I'm sure it's some form of just adaptability. But it's a good one. That would be a good one to like do some more research on.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know if this is a myth or not, but someone will know that previously a crisp would have some chemical layer on it that when you put it on your tongue would strip away either saliva or a top layer of your taste buds to allow the crisp flavor to penetrate more deeply. And you sometimes have those cheap crisps, we do in the UK, where you eat them and your mouth feels like it's burning. I mean, I love it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's got any truth to it as well, whether people are kind of biohacking their tongue a little bit. Be interesting to find out.
Oh man, there's so much you can do with the tongue. Like there's all these like flavor modulators, and like there's this thing where it's like a derivative of a mushroom. It's a mushroom extract where basically it plugs up your bitter receptors. So you consume something bitter, let's say coffee, and this component of it that you've blended in plugs those receptors up. So you perceive it to be 50% as bitter as it is. Like it's the amount you can do to the tongue is pretty impressive these days.
The amount the tongue can do is pretty impressive. It's just such an incredible tool. Adaptability is something I want to talk about as well, because one thing that I always think about, especially with supplements, is why would people stop taking a supplement? And I'm sure you know better than I do. But there's always that argument with usually more uneducated people around health, where they say, well, yeah, but look at this guy. They always do that comparison, or look at this person, where they say, yeah, but all they eat is TV dinners and drink a gallon of Coke a day. And they're 60 years old. They don't look great, but they've made it to 60. So why would I at 25, be optimizing for goji berries, to balance this particular chemical element? I think that's a really tough one. How do you combat that? In that there are people that have just the most appalling diets, and I can't imagine they're particularly happy about it, but they're alive. So do you just alienate those people from the market? Are you just going after a specific? How big is your market, I guess, is the ultimate question.
You'll never get a certain sliver of that population, right? Like there just are people who are going to eat at McDonald's and drink Coke, and like you're just not going to get those people. It's like forget them. But there's a massive cohort that's like health curious, I would say. Like maybe they're overweight and they don't want to be. No one likes being overweight, right? So it's like if you can get close enough, you can pull that person in. If you can approximate with like a healthy soda, maybe it's 80% as tasty as Coke, you can get that person. And that's a giant, giant demographic. Will you ever get the person who just wants Coke no matter what? No. But there's such a huge, like healthy, curious kind of demographic. There's some other really big considerations too, like price point. Like Coke also happens to be very cheap. McDonald's also has to be very cheap. Happens to be very cheap. So like you got to approximate that USP of that they have, which is just great taste, but also great price. And that is where things get really, really, really difficult when you're combining those two challenges. But it's all achievable. That market is massive. There are healthy things that have achieved total mass market appeal. So it's not impossible, but it's just like, how do you get the healthy, curious people on board? That's really the challenge.
Why do you think that unhealthy foods primarily, like we think of any of the chains, Burger King, McDonald's, all those places, and there are tons of others, and they are the most prominent on the high street, and the cheapest, like you mentioned. So I guess they're the cheapest because of efficiencies of scale, not just for them, but for the industry, because is the needle further in their direction? More people eat bad food than good food. More people eat a chocolate bar than a lettuce, for example. Do you think there's ever a time, and it's okay, it's a two-part question, I'll just clarify it quickly. The first part of that question is, why as a human race have we optimized for things that are unhealthy? Is it just consumerism and the smart people are just teaching us to eat shit food because it's what, like you said, sugar, they can sell more of it? That's the first part. And then the second part is there ever a time where there's more healthy food available at a lower cost? Or is there some kind of prohibitive factors there that just mean that it will never get that low?
The why is just biological. Like, we're wired to want sugar because it was hard to get sugar when we were cavemen and women. And so if you found a bunch of fruit, you'd want to eat, gobble it all up. It would taste really good because you want to store all that glycogen and fat. Because then you're going to have to go walk for 10 miles before you find the next fruit. So that's just biological. And these brands know that and optimize around a maximum level of addictiveness. And it's not just sugar, it's a particular combination of sugar, fat, protein, right? So it can be savory, right? It can be a Big Mac. But, and then to your point, the scale thing, I mean, like, people also, like, price matters a lot too. And so that plays a big role. Like, maybe McDonald's wasn't even necessarily what they wanted, but it was half as expensive. So will we ever get to a place where there's a lot more healthy food options? Maybe. You're never going to get away from McDonald's and Burger Kings of the world. That's always going to be there. And honestly, like, people have reverted back to the mean a little bit. Like, tons of healthy food startups have gone out of business because it's just so damn hard to compete with Oreos and Reese's peanut butter cups. And you just look at what still really moves the needle. It's unhealthy stuff. And because a lot of it comes down to economics. It is taste, yes. But you can make good tasting healthy stuff. It just is expensive, and people don't have the money. So I think actually the economics are more of an issue than, like, the issue of, can we physically create healthy products at scale? It's just like, yeah, you can, but no one wants to buy a $20 meal when they could buy an $8 meal.
It's another two-parter. For some reason, I like giving you two-part questions, but you seem to be able to handle them well. So the first part is this. So knowing what you know about the human biology, knowing what you know about what's worked in the past and been very successful, is one of your primary concerns, making your bars as sweet as possible? Question one.
No, not as sweet as possible. Just an ample amount of sweetness. You're never going to get, and this is a common misconception. It's not just like how sweet, it's the quality of sweetness. So, like, there's a certain sweetness curve with sucrose, which is table sugar. There's a certain curve. It's slightly different with, just fructose, say, which is sugar from fruit. Slightly different curve. And so it's not just about intensity, like, whoa, that's sweet. It's like, what's the curve look like? And so stevia, for example, it just has a different curve, and so people are, like, always comparing it to what they know, which is sucrose. So you're, like, eating a low sugar product and you're like, whoa, that's sweet, but it's a weird sweetness, or it's a different sweetness, or it's whatever. So, but no, you don't want to, you also want it to be perceived as healthy, right? If something tastes like junk food, me mentally, I'm like, it doesn't seem healthy. So, but yes, there is a threshold that you have to push past. It has to be some level of sweetness. Otherwise, you're just never going to get mass market appeal. It's not going to happen.
Do you think that because it's a bar, we're conditioned to see bars as chocolate bars? Because it's an interesting way of delivering a health food, a bar. So one fundamental question is, why do a bar?
It's just it's a rectangular prism. It's like an easy thing you can hold in your hand. It's like, why do a cookie? Why do anything? It's, it can pack out efficiently. You can put it in your purse. You can put it in your pocket. You can put it in, like, at some point you need to create a shape of some kind of food, So, just geometrically, it makes sense. But it's also a form factor that allows you to jam a bunch of stuff together and then make it into a rectangle, so it's cool that way. It's like a math problem. It's like, I want to make this amount of protein and this amount of fat and this amount of carbs in 45 grams. How do I build up all the inputs to check, and then also it tastes good? Whereas like other people have different considerations. Maybe it's just, I want to make this taste good. Well, great. Like, put some oats together and pour some honey on it and maybe a little cinnamon, and there you go. You got a great tasting granola bar. That's easy. If you're trying to do it all, it's really, 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 really tough.
Okay. No, I get that. So everyone thinks the supplement industry is a really low barrier to entry. I guess with things like protein powders, possibly even with hydration sticks and even instant coffee, that could be somewhat true if you want something just off the shelf. But with bars, I feel like there's so much more that goes into creating a bar versus creating a clothing range, or even some of the more complex products that are on the market. So just how difficult is it to bring a bar to market? And can you just maybe give some of the kind of main USPs, the biggest qualities of the bars that you produce?
It's very difficult. I mean, you need to know how to do it, first of all, or find someone who does from a food science standpoint. Then you need to figure out who's going to make it, who's going to manufacture it. Then you need the money to do all that. And then you need some go-to-market strategy, some channel strategy, some knowledge of, oh, here's a consumer. Here's how and where I'm going to get them to buy it. Here's the price I'm going to get them to pay for it. That'll be more than it cost me to make, blah, blah, blah. So you have to figure out all those things, as well as like a zillion ancillary things, incorporating your company, hiring, like accounting. It's like, there's endless other things. So it's very, very, very difficult. And then you have to be in the market, and then you have to win. How do you keep customers? How do you keep growing year over year? So I would say it's very difficult, but I mean, that's like any business is very difficult.
There's proven upside. I don't know if you have the brand Grenade over your side of the pond.
It's not so big over here, but it is over here.
So it sold recently to, I always say it wrong, Mondelez or whatever, Cadbury's.
Yeah.
Fairly recently anyway, for I think it was 600 million. At least that was the published figure. And then I'm sure there's more beyond that. And I actually know of the founder. I met him when he was slinging Grenade capsules from literally a desk with a bit of cloth on it at a bodybuilding show, and his wife. And then we kind of watched their rise. And as an early adopter of that bar, it was a health bar initially. Now they do collaborations with Oreo. I mean, they sold to a chocolate brand. So do you think, just from your opinion, do you think that there was a point where they said, okay, we're not so worried about being a health bar now. We're going to be a protein chocolate bar.
Yeah. I do. And it clearly worked. It clearly worked.
Hey, me checking in. Hope you are enjoying the episode so far. It's brought to you by SendLane. We've already spoken about why you should be considering moving to SendLane if you're doing email, SMS, or reviews. Reviews are free with SendLane, just so you know. But they have a commerce roundtable in San Diego on the 18th and 19th of September. So please do go and register if you're in the area, or if you can make the trip. I'm sure they'd be delighted to see you. There's going to be some incredible talent there. It's great guests and great talks. So do check it out. So would you ever do that? Are you morally in this game, or are you in this game to make money?
No, I wouldn't do it if there was not some like mandate to create healthier stuff. Like, I just don't find it that interesting to make an unhealthy product like an Oreo. Is it more commercially viable? Probably. Yeah. To your point, like if Grenade made that pivot and then they blew up, well, yeah, that's a kind of case in point. Just keep making your product less healthy. Eventually it'll just get super mass market. But I just don't find that to be very interesting. And then also you're just like contradicting yourself. So you were saying one thing and now you're just saying something totally different. which I would have a hard time with. But no, I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't say it's akin to selling cigarettes, but like you're just selling something you know is not healthy at scale. You're like, oh, 100,000 people consume this thing I made, and it made them feel worse physically. I would have a problem with that.
This is all speculation from me. I actually don't know enough about their ingredients to know that it's unhealthy. But what I do know is that anything that tastes that good is probably not great for you. And also the collaborations that they're getting involved with. I think to round this back to the kind of conversation we had at the start, they lost the health people because the health people knew, they were educated, they were taking things seriously, and they lost that market. But the market they gained was people that said or felt good about buying, pick up a, I don't know, dairy milk bar. I think you've got those in the US. And they put that back and they picked up the grenade bar next to it and felt like they just made a health decision.
Yeah. That is how you win big, it's like healthy-ish. It's still unhealthy. It's just like, just a touch healthier than, a Cadbury bar or whatever. So
you've got to be careful. You've got to be careful because a lot of people aren't educated. Like I've considered myself to take fitness and health fairly seriously. I train most days. I'm vegan. Try to stay hydrated. I don't know any of the ingredients. I don't know the difference between fruit sugar and normal sugar. You hear people say, "Oh, don't eat too much fruit. It's got too much sugar." I'm like, "What? Yeah, but it's good sugar." Is always the rebuttal. Is it good sugar? I don't fucking know. Why don't I know? Did I mean? So even someone who feels like they're fairly educated.
No, it isn't. It isn't. Because, I mean, go drink a bunch of glasses of apple juice. You're gonna get obese pretty quickly. That's fruit. That's fruit sugar. Sugar's sugar at the end of the day. It really comes down to like the volume, and then are you pairing it with fiber, which slows the absorption of sugar. But that, and there's a good anecdote from a book I read where the guy was like, I have this great slide that I put up on when I'm doing talks at the conferences. It's a 2x2, and it's like a tablespoon of sugar, a slice of white bread, and then I forget what the other two things were. But it's like things where you would be like, and then the question is, what's going to boost your glycemic impact the most? Meaning, what's going to lead to the highest blood sugar spike? And everyone's like, oh, the sugar. And he's like, nope, the bread. So simple carbs are also simple carbs, that are like non-sugar carbs. So you eat bread, it doesn't taste sweet like sugar, but it's literally 10 minutes later going to be sugar in your veins. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, but again, people will frame things as like, oh, this is a smoothie. Like, oh, that sounds healthy. It's like, dude, there's 30 grams of sugar in that. And then you're like, wait, why am I obese? A year after pounding 2 smoothies a day. You're like, well, that thing you thought was super healthy actually had an obscene amount of sugar in it. But it's tricky, man. It's all in moderation. It's like, I eat fruit too. So, and it's all about how you pair it with, calories in, calories out, and exercise. Are you an active person? You can consume a lot of carbs if you're a really active person. It's the totality of your regimen.
So how are you going to build a moat now? And how are you going to win the continuous growth wars, building a bigger company? Are you going to focus on things that you spoke about before, hacking the brain, bioscience, bringing that element into your products? Seems like that's where your passion originally came from. Are you going to double down on marketing and just try and win there? Like what actually gives you competitive advantages, and what are you going to go and chase?
I mean, we're in a very big market, but we're special in it. Our just trademark IQBAR. It's like different. It's evocative in a different way than any other bar is. And then we have that unique spin of the brain. And we're really the only one doing that. There's a couple of tiny copycats out there, but they're tiny and they're going to die. So, it's, keep leaning into what has worked till now and made it special. And I mean, there's like infinity people out there. So just like keep growing the concentric circle of your customer base, and then you will keep growing. Moat, why isn't Hershey's going to like create a competitive product? Because they view it as a niche, and their puddle is our ocean, so what's a niche to them is giant for us. And, maybe at one point we get so big that it's like, oh, it's not so much a niche. Well, great. They'll just buy you. But so we're in this kind of like almost in a way a protected space, because it's not that interesting of a space to really big players. And then, medium term, startup players, they would have to like truly just directly rip us off or copy us to try to compete. And that's a losing strategy in most cases in consumer goods, being a Me Too brand and just trying to copy another kind of uniquely positioned brand. It's a pretty bad strategy. So, it's just operation, like create good products and execute operationally. So much of it is in just like execution. Can you get your costs where you need to be? Can you raise enough money? Can you manufacture consistently? Can you fulfill orders on time, in full? All that stuff. It sounds commoditized. It sounds obvious. It's incredibly hard to do day in and day out, year in and year out. Most people can't do it. So just do that and you're going to probably grow. Yeah, I mean, and then there's a bunch of other variables too. We have an incredibly low overhead. So we have a very small team. So the revenue per head is really high. We only have 6 people. And it's just very hard for other organizations to do that. Like we all wear multiple hats. I work in the business versus on the business most of the time. So I happen to think we have a great team too. That is a moat in and of itself, but it's all those things.
So I think a lot of people are aware of the health. I know I'm focusing on the bar, but it's because I don't usually get to speak to people that are producing bars. They're aware of the health element of these bars now because they've been around a little while. So you probably don't have to do too much education around the kind of health bar space. But how much are you investing in when you're doing new customer acquisition, having to educate around why you're special? Do you even focus on that? Like, how do you get people into your funnel, and how effective is that as being like a point of difference for you?
At first we did. It's very, very, very expensive to educate consumers. So eventually we learned it's a far better strategy to meet people where they are. They're searching for things like a chocolate bar. Cool, we have a chocolate bar. They're searching for high protein bar. Great, we have a high protein bar. Vegan bar, whatever. Meet them where they are on the upfront things they care about, a lot of people are searching for, etc. And then on the back end, if they're interested, educate them with the rounding element of like, by the way, it's good for your brain too. It's kind of like a plus. It's like you were already interested because we hit your protein needs and your taste needs and your clean label needs, whatever, the things everyone cares about. Plus, it's good for the brain. But it's like, if you reverse that order, then you're like a bulletproof coffee. Like, you have to educate every consumer, which is a super laborious process, incredibly expensive process. You're going to have to spend $100 million to like really build out some big market. Whereas if you just reverse the order, meet them where they are, spend 1/10 that. And so that was just a learning we developed over the first couple of years.
I guess that works in retail too. Like, what are your channel strategies, and what percentage of revenue do they bring for the business now?
It's about half and half, but yeah, you totally. In retail, how many people go into the store and they want a brain bar? Like, no one. They want a snack that's high in protein and low in sugar, or whatever else. Maybe they want gluten-free or low sugar. They have their specs, and you have to like I said, you have to check all those boxes. And then, it's kind of interesting. called IQBAR. What does that mean? You know, you intrigue them. So yeah. I mean, it's even more so true. You have even less time with the customer by far in brick and mortar. You have a 3, 4, or 5 seconds max. So, if you're a brand that requires education, it's really hard to make it work in brick and mortar.
So once you've got this customer, how do you make them sticky? How do you start to deliver on your messaging and start to educate them once they've got the product? Can you break that down by retail, post-purchase strategy? Is there anything you can do there to try and, you know, keep the momentum with that customer and D2C?
Not really. I mean, there's some people messing around with QR codes and stuff on packaging, such that I buy it at Whole Foods and then I scan it for, like, there are some people doing that. We don't, but you know, you gotta hope that you have a good product. They like it. So the next time they're there and they see it again, they buy it again. But I think we're interested in potentially trying to push in that direction of something like a QR code and then retargeting them and getting them to buy online and things like that. Of course, we do all that for online purchases. But it's trickier in brick and mortar for sure.
I guess that's why cereal boxes and things like that often did like giveaways, win a car, you know, register online or redeem that code online. That makes a lot of sense, actually. Now I think about it, that's probably what they were trying to do, trying to understand who you were. There must be some service. It just came into my head when you were talking there. But most of our receipts now are digital. Really annoys me, actually, when you go into a shop and then they don't offer you a paper. I don't usually take a paper receipt anyway, but then they say, "Oh, what's your email?" So we can send you the receipt, and that's the only option. But there must be some kind of aggregator who's looking at the receipt data and then looking at the customer data from that receipt and putting 2 and 2 together. You have an email, you know what they bought. Surely someone out there is collating that information. If they're not, there's a business.
I mean, think about Amazon. They own Whole Foods.
Right.
So what you do is you scan your Amazon Prime QR code and you get a discount when you check out at Whole Foods. Everyone does it. Well, that now they just connected the dots between your whole shopping cart, physical shopping cart, and you as a digital personality. I mean, it's genius. So, and they only give you like $1 off on like $300. Like, it's a joke, but yeah, that's being done.
Smart. Makes sense. And what about on D2C? So once you've acquired that customer, I imagine you have to, are you still profitable on that first purchase D2C?
It sort of varies. I mean, we are certainly for people who we didn't acquire via an advertisement. But yeah, we're like right around break even, I believe. First purchase,
which is very good for a lowish AOV, high delivery cost. I don't know if you include delivery cost in that, but and then obviously it's a repeat purchase. So like, how do you retain those customers on D2C? How do you keep them coming back?
Email marketing, SMS marketing. Got to have a good product, of course. Retargeting, advertising. It's a variety of things. Same stuff everyone does, but yeah, I think first and foremost, they have to like it.
Nice. All right, I'm going to wrap this up with a couple of minute, really quick speed round, if that's okay with you. So just a 1 or 2 sentence answers, really. What almost sunk the business? Give us a moment in time where you almost lost it.
We were doing a big production run for CVS. We were going into 3,000 doors, and the wrappers didn't seal properly. And we were going to have to scrap a ton of, we did scrap a ton of product, and we thought we were going to miss the ship date. I thought maybe that was going to put us under, but we figured out a way to get new wrappers, reproduced the following week, and we made it just in time. So
who takes responsibility?
All my hellish moments are pretty much all on the manufacturing floor.
As are so many others. So is there any kind of like manufacturing insurance, like where the value of your order 10x, like if anything goes wrong with this six-figure order, then you
Yeah.
could.
Oh, there's insurance for everything. It's a question of, is it worth it?
Yeah, when you're playing with tight margins, probably not. Books, learning materials that have had a significant impact on your business or you personally.
How to Get Rich by Felix Dennis is a British guy, founder of Maxim magazine. That's my favorite book ever. Just made me love entrepreneurship that much more. What else? Traction, which is a book I really love, which is basically about just trying a bunch of different things and seeing what sticks. Like try more things than you, more channel strategies and go-to-market strategies than you originally would, and then double down on it, what's working. That book changed the way I thought about business. Influence is like kind of a cliche but classic one about just why does anyone do anything? They do it because of social proof or appeals to authority or reciprocity. There's a series of tried and true things that have always been the reason people do anything. Those are some big ones.
Yeah, quite the list. If money was no object, let's say you've already been bought out for more than you could ever imagine, what would you be striving for this business? What impact do you want it to make, if any at all?
Just displace unhealthy food at scale. Like, bigger you get, the more unhealthy things you displace, the more people whose lives you make better. That's why it's fun. Like, a lot of businesses will say, well, we give 10% to this profits to this cause or whatever. For me, the way to make the biggest impact is the thing you actually sell in the first place is improving lives. Because every sale you log, you did something good. So make your product inherently good, life improving, and then get as big as you possibly can, because inherently that's like sort of a philanthropic exercise. So yeah, I mean, that's the ultimate goal, is own the brain and body space, displace as many unhealthy foods as we can.
Can you set a challenge that takes no longer than 40 minutes to an hour for anyone listening to this to do in their business, in their personal life? It could be go and run your numbers through this tool so you can work out this, or it could just be don't eat this anymore. Try and cut down on this in your diet. Absolutely anything you want, but something that's going to benefit them in their business or their personal life.
I would say 40 minutes. I mean, this is like super basic, but work out, like exercise every day. And as a reset for me, especially in a work from home context, like I work from my apartment, you have to have some breaking point in your day where you're elevating your heart rate for an extended period of time. It's going to reset you mentally. Forget the physical piece, that's great, but mentally you need a reset on a ideally daily basis, but certainly bi-daily basis. And if you let that slip, it's just, everyone says they don't have the time, but it's just like, that has to be non-negotiable.
Final question. The best ad you've run, the best creative that you've run, that you did maybe in the past, maybe not the one you're running now, but what's something that's worked for you particularly well?
It's a great question that I don't have a great answer to, because I don't touch any of our ads. But I think we've had certain just really well done UGC do very, very well. But it's, nothing super innovative or anything, or, it's just like not well polished and very authentic, and the person was our target demographic, talking about real use cases, how they're using our product, not just, oh, this is great, I love this. It's like, I use this in that specific context, and here's the result I saw, like, I love it. And I think stuff like that does really well for us.
All right. Thank you very much. If people do want to, and they haven't yet sampled any of your products, which is the best and most profitable channel for them to buy them from?
Well, the best thing you could do is order us on Amazon, wait until it arrives, and then leave a review. It's a single, if you're feeling charitable, that would be cool. But yeah, no, eat IQBAR. Actually, we just bought IQBAR.com. Our main URL is eatiqbar.com, but we just bought IQBAR.com, which now redirects to eatiqbar.com.
How many zeros were in that transaction?
$26,000.
Whoa,
expensive.
Isn't it?
But,
not.
you know,
there was a chat about this recently in a Slack group that I'm in, the operators one, and they were talking about like how much is too much for a domain, and some of the figures flying around in there. I was just like, I don't know. I could pull the trigger on that. I could, if I have one more bonus question. How did you pull the trigger on a $26,000 digital transaction? How did you justify that to yourself?
Well, we had the money. We raised money not too long ago, and we don't lose money as a business. So it's sort of like, how do you make your asset being your company, more valuable? That's like, if you can own your trademark.com, just the long-term value of that, there's no way that you don't make that money back. Think of just some percentage of people type that in .com, press enter, and it goes to a site that says for sale. That's not good. And then they're going to Google you and then click on your sponsored Google AdWords. So that just charged you, a penny or whatever. So that adds up. So it's just like, there's no way that you don't make that money back, especially as a store doing hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. Like, you're just going to make that back. And let's say someone wants to acquire you, that just makes you a more valuable asset that you have that. So it wasn't that hard of a decision, ultimately.
Nice. All right.
But if I had no money and I was like a cash strapped, like I was for years and years, then I wouldn't do it. And I didn't. It just, we got to a point where it's like, all right, the business is big enough. This is valuable enough. Like, we'd be silly not to do this.
Timing. So someone was patiently waiting with that domain in their GoDaddy or wherever it was, waiting for the day that you were ready to buy it. Because there's no way that they just had that randomly. Smart move by them, I guess. Bit predatory. Anyway, Will, thank you. Thanks so much for sharing this with us. And we'll just drop your Twitter handle in and then we'll be done. Oh, yeah. So it's just at Will Nitze, WILLNITZE. And then at Eat IQBAR is the brand on all social channels. That was Will from IQBAR. What an interesting chat. And I hope you got some valuable information from that. I certainly did. And we will see you next week. This show, as always, is brought to you by Rewind and SendLane.